Aloha, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Bishop G5 Nidor series. And in the previous videos we have discussed what happens after we play knight b2 d7 and white goes for f4, queen f3 setups. If you haven't seen them, go check it out. And in this particular video we are gonna be looking at quasi some challenging moves for our tricky move order with knight b2 d7 instead of e6 move. And the top two choices by most of the people are bishop c4 and queen e2 that we are gonna be discussing. I intend to make this variation the last part of my series. However, when I was pondering and doing some random stuff in this variation, I ended up with a fascinating brand new idea, and it forces me to make an extra bonus video, but I'm not gonna give any spoilers. That video is gonna be my final video, but let's do not get distracted by those fancy spoilers, and let's focus on this move, bishop c4. So this is, as I've mentioned, it's a little bit a tricky move because white can go immediately bishop c4, which goes into another tabia called the Sozin attack, Robert James, Bobby Fischer's favorite weapon, and also it is used by very strong players in the history of chess. So for me this is like a hybrid setup, and white is trying to exploit the fact that we are blocking our bishop in a sensible way. Now what we need to do is we gotta grasp some thematic ideas in this line with bishop g5 and bishop c4, which requires us a little bit of precision. What I mean with that, the only move that will keep the game in balanced territory is queen b6. I know I just told you in the previous videos that we are not going for the poison pawn variation. We're starting with e6, f4, queen b6. But in this case, the point being of queen b6 is we are somehow, I'm not a pawn grabbing type of guy, but we are putting a threat on the b2 pawn. But just to illustrate you why we should play this move instead of this natural, for instance, e6 move. White short castles, bishop e7, and all of a sudden, zabang! Bishop takes e6, followed by knight takes e6, attacking our queen as well as the pawn on g7. We have to move the queen and keep an eye on this knight c7 fork, and white takes that pawn. King goes to f7, knight f5. So white has sacked a piece, but in return they got two pawns and our king is pretty exposed. This is no bueno. We don't want to go get into these troubles right out of the opening. So why queen b6 and why not queen c7? Queen c7 might also lead us to some trouble. It looks like a tempo move. We are attacking the bishop. However, white retreats. I mean, they can play queen b2 as well, but bishop b3 is more useful. It is also somehow anticipating b5 move with a tempo. And after bishop b3, if we play e6, now white goes all in with f4, bishop e7, and then zabank on our face. After f takes e6, knight takes e6, queen a5, knight takes g7, and good luck, my dear viewers and friends, defending that. We don't wanna get into those troubles, just to avoid those. After bishop c4, we are playing exclusively queen b3. So queen b3 is a tempo move, but the more important point is whenever like white sacrifices on e6 and imagine knight is on e6, it doesn't attack our queen. So we don't need to move our queen. That's matters. That's a significant difference. And now the most likely white is gonna play bishop b3 just to guard the pawn. They don't want to give up free pawns, and also bishop is more retreating the bishop didn't change the quality of the bishop's placements. One move we don't want to see, actually. Objectively, it is a bad move. I think computers gives like 0.7 advantage for black, offering a pawn sacrifice. However, this is not the poison pawn variation, which means we can simply take it. White comes with rook b1, attacking our queen, queen a3, short castles, e6. Now let's say they go for the sacrifice again. No, threatening a queen c7 fork. We retreat. Also keeping an eye on the bishop, even though bishop is defended by the queen and knight. Now f4, white is trying to blast open the center. But we have this cunning move, king f7, attacking the knight, f5, and a6. So this might look ugly for some of you from black's point of view, but black is up a piece. My king, our king might look exposed, but just compare this position. Just compare this position to this one, where we don't have these pawns around our king, which is a great shelter for our lonely king. And in this case, we have these pawns around our king, and let's say after bishop retreats, now this knight is doing a tremendous job. It is covering so many squares. Like only g6 square is weak, and it might take some time black to exploit that weakness. That knight, the pony on e6 looks lovely, can't deny it, but we have also some squares for our pieces. And you know, b5 bishop b7, I think black must be in good shape here. If you still insist on not going for pawn grabbing, which I highly respect, I gotta mention, which I highly respect for not going for pawns. Shout out to Yasser Seyran. And goes for e6. We gotta face some difficulties though, and the engines really favor white's attacking chances, followed by this sequence. f4, knight c5, we gotta protect our e6 pawn. Queen e2, knight c5 attacks also the e4 pawn. Queen e2, guards the pawn, defends the bishop. Queen c7, trying to launch some play on the queen side for us. King b1, a calm move, saying black, show me, and let's say we ask the bishop where to go. Bishop h4, and now short castles. In this particular position, white has a pretty strong pawn break in the center, which is, I think, obvious for some of you. e5, and this is not a sacrifice. That pawn is well guarded by the queen, and we have to react it. Let's say we take, white takes, and now the knight has to go somewhere, and it doesn't have too many squares. It can't go to e4. because knight and queen is covering. Knight d7 blunders the bishop. So the only possible options are knight d5 and knight e8. Knight d5 is even worse than knight e, this ugly, awkward looking knight d5. And after knight d5, well, they can simply take, and just look at this monster bishop. Absolutely monster. They opened the f5 for the rook entrance, and you know, my knight is looking lovely on d4. Our bishop is having a difficult time. Rooks are on their initial position. We gotta face some difficulties if we reach this position, and instead of knight d5, if you go back to knight e8, white loves eliminating the dark square bishop, because now like it removes one of the defenders around our king. We love to see our knight on f6, you know, covering some squares. Knight on f6 is the best friend of our king. But our knight is on e8, and white plays knight e4. Knight e4 is such a great move. So the point being of knight e4, it wants to eliminate on one hand our only active, very depressive it sounds, I know, our only active piece on c5, and also in case we want to play b5, or like our c6 square is weak, and our queen has to go to an awkward square if the knight might land on c6. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I know. These positions might look unpleasant for black. And if he take that knight, simply queen takes. I don't want to see our minor pieces and heavy pieces sitting towards depression level 3000 on the 8th rank. I'm making some random moves. Oh, look at this battery. Our dark squares. A6 pawn is under attack. I would play this position from white every day, every night. As I said, I respect them not grabbing the pawn, but these are the consequences that we might face if white plays strongly. However, I can guarantee you in most of the cases white will retreat the bishop to b3, and we're gonna examine bishop b3 positions from now on. So after bishop b2 we play e6, and this is somehow we can call it a critical moment of the game, because based on the next white's move they might set the tone or dictate in which direction the game might go. So white has a couple of different plans, and they can short castle, they can long castle, start pushing immediately f4, you know, lots of options. And let's see one by one if white castles short. Now we play bishop e7, and white has, as I've said, f4, and then, you know, bringing the rooks to the center, queen somewhere, f4 e5, or even in these bishops, the sniper sitting on b3 positions, they can send f5 pawn to weaken these pawn chain with f7 and e6, just trying to get the maximum out of this bishop sitting on b3. Or as well as like some positional approach with a4, because a4 they even want to go further, advance the pawn to a5, so that our b5 ideas might be out of cards, and Let's see what happens after a4. This is the so-called a little bit like slow positional approach. I'm sorry if it is a bad description, but I put it that way. Now we have knight c5, a multi-purpose move. We might go for the bishop on b3. One thing I have to mention, a4 has the point of stucking the bishop back to a2 in some cases, but that might be also a little bit slow, because, you know, this bishop is not a fantastic piece looking on these f7 e6 pawns right now. Knight c5, although defends put some extra protection on the e6 pawn, so that sacky macky stuff on e6 isn't that tempting anymore for the white. Like white continues advancing the pawn and grabbing some space on the queen side, making our b5 move. And maybe in some cases bishop e7 even harder. We retreat queen c7, queen e2, short castles, bring the rooks to the center. We unfortunately have to play in some cases b6 or b5, because if we don't do it, like, this pawn is weak, and white might start bringing a piece on b6, like knight a4, knight b6, although the knight is covering now the a4 square, but you know, just as like a bit some sort of ideas that I wanted to show. All right, so we have seen this a4 shenanigans. Let's focus on this harmless looking, but it is the beginning of a great plan, I have to say. King h1. We still play knight c5 just to give us some breathing space for our queenside pieces, and now white plays f4. So the point being of a king h1 is like, even I can say if someone plays king h1, they pre-moved f4 in online chess, you know. So king h1, knight c5, f4, and now we are asking the bishop where to go. But now black has a fantastic plan, starting with bishop takes f6. You can retreat, but this involves a fantastic pawn sacrifice, which we are gonna see right now, starting with the move e5. So black is sacrificing a pawn. I mean, we can retreat and deny the pawn sacrifice, but then f5 might in some cases be annoying. The point being of f5 is maybe not now, but they try to weaken this diagonal so that they want to get the maximum out of this Sozin bishop, this light square sniper, even though we can chop it off anytime we want. Let's say we accept this pawn sacrifice, and after take bishop e5, and white has this lovely move, queen on h5, which is a double attack. It attacks the f7 pawn as well as the bishop, and to my eyes it is the only move to guard both of them. And white brings another piece, x-raying our uncastled king. So ladies and gentlemen, it is black to move, and let's lose the game immediately. I wanted to shoot. Let's lose the game immediately. Short castles loses on the spot. You can pause the video, but you don't need to pause. It is far more obvious. Rook takes f6. I don't want to call it sacrifice. The point being is h6 is hanging, and rook e3, rook g3 might be lights out. So we can't allow that. Okay, let's say we have just seen that like a6, if we castle a6 pawn will be hanging after this exchange sacrifice. Let's say we want to make a waiting move, knight d7, but now zoom, knight d5, utilizing the pin, attacking our queen as well as the bishop. Now white doesn't need to sacrifice, but this is unfortunately also sleeping time for black. And we have just seen what could happen after this crazy pawn sacrifice, which leads us to the only move, king f8. so that after if white sacks on f6, the h6 pawn is defended by our rook. Okay, so we have seen these short castles plans, and followed by some a4 positional approach or king h1 f4 and e5 ideas. Now let's see if white tries to bring their king to queen side, starting with the move queen d2. Queen d2. Now we play bishop e7. As I've said, we are not afraid of the sacrifice because we have these pawns, and you know, this sacrifice after bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, knight takes e6, it might look tempting, but it doesn't come with a tempo to attack our queen, ladies and gentlemen. So white castle short, and we still the same motif, knight c5, giving some space for our undeveloped pieces. Maybe we're gonna chop off that bishop anytime we want. And white, before I play rook h2 e1 move. Now white has also two different approaches. One of them is more aggressive, and the other one is keeping the game more solid. So let's first examine the more aggressive one, starting with rook h2 e1, and of course f4 idea. Now lots of you might get tempted with a short castling move, but we should first include this queen c7 move. Our queen has done his job on b6, and it was blocking our queenside play, starting with b5 pawn advance, and you know, queen c7 might also anticipate e5 move, so we are not in hurry with short casting. And actually the short castling is a big blunder, because after f4 we play h6. White can take, we love to see it. Unfortunately a pretty strong move, h4, and that bishop is poisoned, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to take, well, good luck with that. If you want to save your pieces, rook is coming here, g4, queen h2, and computer, the engine recommends I'm giving the piece back, but still black is toasted. So we don't rush with short castling. We first play queen c7, and if the same thing happens after like f4 and h6, well, we can take, because they can't exploit our h file we didn't cast yet. So keep that in your mind. Queen c7, f4, h6. Now they can retreat, they can take, I mean, as I said, rook h3 is a more aggressive dynamic option, so they want to go for our king. e5 also attacks our knight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have several different options, but simply the most solid one is d takes e5, f takes e5. We can even take that one, and something like knight d5, you know, trying to exploit the pin. Or if you want to simply keep the game as simplified as possible, they want to keep the knight in the center. Take. Now we can take, they can take, knight d5, queen goes back, take, and we have a bailout option of queen f4, which will lead to a massive simplification. The heavy pieces will come out, bishop versus knight and rooks. Most likely either the better player wins, or the game might end in a draw. So Instead of this rook h1 f4 e5 idea, let's say white tries to keep it solid with like f3 g4 shenanigans, ladies and gentlemen. We still play queen c7, and white goes for this Yugoslav type of attack, initiating with a g4 move. But now we might get a comfortable position because we also get our queenside counter play going with b5. I can play king b1, you know, a3, or let's say a3. At least somehow stops our b4 pawn advance harassing the knight. But we can now open up the b file with rook b8 because a3 created a hook, as they say in chess. After king b1, I don't know, bishop d7, we don't rush with b4. Let's put an extra protection on that a4 square because bishop is also cowering. And rook h1 h6, we can always bail out b4, as I said, and short castles. I mean, the position is playable, I think, from both sides. If you love bishop pair, well, enjoy it. And yeah, so this is our I think we have discussed most of the themes that can arise after this bishop c4 move order. Just to wrap it up, we start with queen b6 and only then e6. Do not start with e6 or queen c7. First queen b6, e6, bishop e7, knight c5, and we might get a natural development. So that was our bishop c4 line. Now let's jump into the queen e2 business. So queen e2 is also pretty popular, and it has I mean, if Blaga messes up also some moves, they might get into immediate trouble. What is the point of queen e2? Well, it blocks the bishop, but it enables white to long castle in one go. Queen might head to f3 square, like you can go to d2, but then you're gonna need another tempo to bring it up to f3. And it also might support e5 push in the future, initially starting with first f4. So queen e2, okay, fine. We have to play h6. I mean, this is the main move, and I also recommend this move, which is, I mean, the only thing about, like, I don't like this theory memorization, blah blah. If you are thinking about those things, well, just two moves is nothing. h6 and g6. Don't go g5. That's pawns might get immediately harassed with some pawn pushes. So what is the point of g6? Will become obvious. Maybe we will fianchetto to our bishop. Maybe we will develop our bishop via e7. So do not get simply biased by after g6 I'm gonna fianchetto my bishop. Okay, let's go. f4. White is immediately trying to make the queen e2 move a little bit sensible. I mean, they can also start with long castle and then e5. This is the move that we are gonna play still, and these things might transpose. Well, for instance, do not go bishop g7 here, then the d6 pawn will be hanging, and it is not like a pawn sacrifice that we are going for. It is simply a blundering a pawn. But let's look at the main continuation, starting with f4 and now e5. We can't allow white to push e5. We have to put something in the center, just like a pawn, I don't know, some candle, some chocolate. e5, take. Now white has a pawn. In e4 we have a pawn on e5 which neutralizes each other, and now the main continuation looks sexy, but I'm pretty sure no one is gonna take that knight. because after knight takes, e5 moves and white is completely winning. We can't move the knight. Our queen would be hanging, and if, let's say, we move the queen, this comes with a devastating check. So they generally costly it, but let's say they retreat, it will simply transpose. We play b5, long castle, queen c7, trying to get out of this h4 bishop h4 pin, and also this rook d1 Pinowski. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are a couple of ways that white can proceed. Let's see the most harmless one first, which is knight d5, simply attacking our queen. Simply chop it off, why not? I mean, rook takes might look a little bit like bishop comes with a tempo, you know, they simply take with the pawn, and we blockade that d5 pawn with our bishop, and we got a comfortable position. We can long castle, maybe reroute our bishop, and, you know, start advancing these lovely pawns. So now we are seeing the benefit of these 4 lovely juices. It is like 4 versus 2. Okay, so if white wants to be sexy, they have this option, and let's look at this option first. Rook takes d7. It looks like a double exclamation mark, but it is sensible. They want to remove one of the only defender of d5 square. And guys, this is the position where we should approach as if we are not up an exchange. We should approach just we can give up the exchange anytime we back, you know. Just keep that in your mind. Just to illustrate, knight d5 attacking our queen. We have to cover this fork. Queen a5 is banned. Queen here is banned. So queen c7, we have to cover the c7 square. And now another knight is landing on a5, maybe going for the c6 square. Now bishop g7, and now queen f3. Lovely move. White is setting up some threats, starting with bishop e7, rook e8. Only move to if you want to save the exchange, and now knight c6. Now our queen has only 1 square to go. They can't go anywhere else, and white has this cunning move, very counterintuitive, knight d8, attacking our queen, and also a big threat on f7 pawn. And in this case, we gotta sacrifice the exchange back and simply play a quiet move. Queen a7, just or knight c5 is also playable, just to free our remaining pieces. So keep that in your mind, guys. This sacrifice might look tempting for some white players, but it leads to not a sexy, less desirable position as they would desire. Okay, so one last thing. It has this lowly sideline, maybe we can call it that way, queen f3, which is setting up a small trap. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can pause the video, but you don't need to do it. Now our knight is under attack, and we have to develop, we have to guard it. Also, it will be lovely if we develop our dark square bishop. We can go e7 or g7, and one of them is losing on the spot. We have to play bishop g7 and guess the move after bishop e7. Well, now this sacrifice looks simply like GG, why not type of sacrifice, because if you take with the queen or bishop, this knight will be hanging, so white will gain 2 minor pieces for the rook, which is mostly favorable for for white, and if we take with the bishop, the same happens. And if we recapture with the knights, knight d5 is another 4 Qe2. Queen is under attack, and if we move the queen, they will simply capture the bishop, and the game will most likely end in an L. So we have seen this knight d5 idea, queen f3, rook takes d7. I think those are the main continuations. I mean, they can try something else, but you will figure out your own way. You know that it is not such a challenging move for you. And on that note, I think I have we have discussed all of them. So thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. It was my first YouTube series, and I am thrilled to see you in another series. I forgot to mention, a bonus video is coming right after this video. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in that next video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you.